Hello. We're back. Welcome back to another episode of Yet Another LARP podcast with me, Mark/Lucan.
I mean, Matt/Saren.
And today we have very special guest, big fan of their work. We have Robbie/Frith from the Imperial Orcs. Welcome. Welcome. We do.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on. We are very excited about this one today because, as I just said, we're big fans of Frith. And the plan is to talk about the Imperial Orcs today, something that I think a lot of people probably don't get to hear enough about. Certainly, I don't want to speak for you, Matt, but I know very little about the Imperial Orcs. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more.
Yeah, I think, and I think we said previously, well, in my opinion, there seems to be a bit of a buzz about the Imperial Orcs at the moment, which is cool. So we get to talk about it and why it is.
Absolutely. And if there's anyone watching who hasn't chosen a nation yet, perhaps this will help sway you in a direction. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. So, as always, we like to start off with a little introduction and find out how our guest got into LARP in the first place and what they're up to currently at Empire. So, Robbie, if you want to tell us how it all began.
Oh, okay. Well, I started Empire when I was 16, fresh out the gate. Gave it a little go, and then wasn't sure about it. And then I came back as part of a group, and I had a lot better time. And then going on now, an Imperial Orc. I started off not as an Imperial Orc. I started off as a smelly human.
I can't even imagine what that was like.
No, in Urizen. I got into LARP because someone thought I had the energy for it. Because we were in their classroom and they were like, "Do you do LARP?" And I'm like, "No, I have no idea what that is, other than odd references." And then they're like, "You should do this thing," and then they just threw it at me. And then we were going to go together, but they ended up not going. But I went anyway, and that's how it all came about. That is that.
So you hadn't heard about it before this person mentioned it?
Yeah, no, I had the notion of like, I was aware it existed and it was a thing, but it was sort of in the same category as like, I know ice hockey's a thing, but like,
yeah.
I've never touched it. I know nothing about it other than it exists and it's a thing. And then they're like, here is like 6 links back in the day where you needed so many links, and then read through like most of it in like an afternoon. And I'm like, yeah, all right, okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, nice. So you began in Urizen, which is another. I was just saying about how we don't know an awful lot about the Orcs, and Urizen's another one. What pulled you into Urizen first?
I didn't have an idea of what nation at the time, and then a mate of mine, who I invited, she was like, "Hey, I got an offer from a group. Do you want to join the group?" And it was in Urizen, and I didn't. It was between Urizen and Wintermark, and I wasn't very big on the whole Rohan / knockoff Viking style that ooh
knockoff Viking. Wow.
Yeah, vibe that was going on, and I was like, I don't really want to touch that. That's not my vibe. But I do like the elf thing. The elf thing's cool. So we ended up going there. And then I read the brief more, and then as I played, I read the brief more, and I was like, oh, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. And so
nice.
Went in, no idea what I was doing, and then it just sort of worked out from there.
Yeah. Well, and then you found your way to the Orcs, which, like I said, we'll cover that in greater detail shortly. But for the guys watching live currently, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat as always, and we'll either end up answering them at the time if it's particularly relevant, or we will try and allocate some time at the end if any questions come up. And similarly, if you're watching this in the future when it's on YouTube, drop a comment and we'll respond in the comments.
I've got a first question, which is around Robbie Origins, the origin story. What year did you join Empire then? Because you're saying you kind of glanced at it when you were 16.
Yeah. I joined 2016, like July.
I was only, yeah. I was going to say, so confident in saying you're probably the sort of oldest going back experienced player we've got or had.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think we've had anyone who's been in the game longer than you have, for example. So this is a bit of a random question, a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
But would you say the game's changed much? You said you first went, when let's say 2016. Do you think the game's changed much in those sort of?
Oh yeah, the community's changed a lot. The way that the game works has changed a lot, especially over lockdown. Like there were so many rules, like just tweaking. That I'm still running off stuff from ages ago. I prefer it now than it was, 100%. Like it's a lot clearer how to do stuff. It's still very confusing, but it's a lot more. You just need to do X, Y, and then it does Z, rather than you don't know what X, Y are. It's very clear if you just need to do those things, and it will do the thing that you want it to do, which is a lot better for someone, especially like myself. The community is a lot less little groups of itself. Now everyone, as soon as you join, everyone sort of at a character has an idea of who's who and who you can go to for help and who you can talk to just for fun. Especially like the amount of discords that there are. There used to not be that many, and it used to just be forums and Facebook groups. And when you're not as literacy, that's the word, literacy confident as myself, it's a bit of a hassle. But being able to just hop on a call and be like, hi, I have like 26 questions, do you mind? And everyone's always happy to just answer them, which is,
I think we're lucky that there's the support for the game currently is like there's so much going on. Like the Facebook groups are great. There's a Facebook group for sort of every nation and every bit and bob traditions within the nations and stuff. And then like, you've got the Discord as well, which is full of which we kind of touched on last episode, didn't we, Mark? But kind of the support side of it's great. Do you know what I'd love to do? And maybe this could be a goal, Mark, one day, is get a day one player on and just talk about what the game was in its infancy, in its first couple of events, like how many players, like I don't know how many players played, how many people were in each nation. That'd be really
really What year did it start?
2013.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're almost day one.
Oh, I'm 3 years behind, and I technically classify my LARP career as like 2017 because that's when I actually knew what I was doing.
Oh god, well, mine's yet to begin if that's how we're classifying it.
Fair enough. Yeah, no. I know a few year one, event one people, and they're an interesting lot. Most of them are very like great to chat to, and you always have like new things that you learn about within the lore of Anvil itself, as like the site itself. The more you learn, it's like, oh, so the pub used to have a second story? I didn't know that.
Was you about to say that? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you would have like people turning around and it's like, oh yeah, there's like all these cryptids that exist. And it's like, what do you mean? It's like, oh yeah, there's like people we never know and they've been doing things since day one and we still don't understand them. It's like, oh. So it's very great to chat to year oneers occasionally, and it's just like, oh, okay, didn't know that. And it just keeps going on from there.
Imagine just quite mind-blowing to think they started this game. And again, I don't know what the first game weekend player, like the size of it, but since our time back, it's I wouldn't say it's doubled, but maybe it ain't far off that. It's definitely to seem to just got massive. So it'd be interesting to get their stance on it and
the
like,
first event. I always forget. Did we start at the same event or were you one after me?
No, I think it was September, wasn't it?
I'm not
I
sure.
think it's the same event. It was the same event. I'm pretty sure.
The first event we went to. When I say we, I mean Tom and I. It was, I think, the last event where Wintermark and Dawn were in the same field as everyone else, and then E1 2018 they went into the overflow.
Yeah,
because Dawn was up where the marches are when I went to my first event, and Glory Square was a fraction of the size it is now.
I remember you could hardly fit like 5 people in it.
Yeah, it was small. It was the Glory cubicle.
Yeah.
And also, I remember Wintermark, they used to restrict. Well, I guess they'll get to that point now as well, but they used to restrict how many people would camp an IC. I remember the Dunnings had to take a big hit, but they were like, okay, we won't take half our group in because of the field and stuff. But
yeah.
But anyway, we digress. What are we here for today? It is what it is.
We're here for Orc Talk. We're here for the best nation.
So I guess to start, so we've spoken a bit about Robbie, but we haven't spoken a bit about Frith yet.
Oh no!
So I don't know if we want to talk about Frith first.
Okay.
I'd love to hear about Frith.
Yes.
I guess we start from the beginning. In that case, in the beginning, there was a wheat now. I play Frith, who is an Oathright, who is the current Wearer of Worth, which is a cultural title in the nation. He's 94. He's a first generation Imperial Orc from way back since like the first and second rebellions to the Liberation and up to a modern period. He's known as a bit of a wild card outside the camp, and in the camp, he's an old guy. He's the granddad of quite a lot of social circles. He is currently a bannerless orc, but he's not a reaver. He's just not in a group at the minute, but he's heavily associated with the Red Hands and the Stormcrows quite heavily. And Frith's main thing is performing diplomacy with other nations and just sort of chatting to them, finding out what they're doing, if they need a hand, if they can help us with stuff, and securing orcish dominance within the world. that is his thing, and also being a general scamp when it comes to certain religious topics.
I love the idea, or the fact, I should say, that Frith is 94, and yet you're probably one of the younger people within the orcs. That's a funny juxtaposition for me.
Yeah. There's quite a few a lot younger than me, and they're playing around their age.
Yeah.
And then there's me who's playing. Yes, I'm nearly a century old. Don't mind me, just running up a hill, no problem.
Is there anyone who's 93 in real life, but they're playing 20-year-olds?
Yeah, 20-year-old.
Oh, what's his name? There's one orc player.
Hey, kids.
By the name of David, who's I don't want to be disrespectful and misguess. Who is way older than I am, way older than most people.
What up, fellow young people?
Fellow young people. Oh, there's plenty of them. There's hordes of them everywhere. You come into the event and there's a couple new people, and it's great. I love to see it. A lot of the Red Hands are quite. I'd say they're either around my age or slightly younger, or just a couple years older than I am. And then me and Kerry are trying to wrangle them all and try and work out what they're doing, but it's not going well. But I'm definitely one of the. I'm the below average when it comes to actual age. Frith age is, as far as I have the numbers on, The only orc presently I've met who is older than Frith is Grud Who Thinks, who is ageless at this point. So
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, we for anyone who hasn't interacted with Frith yet, if that ends up happening, you're in for a treat. It's very fun, very very fun person to interact with. I think we've only ever had fun times in our paths. We're gonna have to tell them about the soap, aren't we? That's
It's gonna come up.
Yeah, that's orc look and feel, isn't it?
Hang on a minute.
Soap eaters.
They love eating soap.
I may be a criminal consumer of whatever I'm handed, but don't pin that on the rest of the orcs, please. Please.
So, for a bit of context, we ran a player event, and I made some soap, which we used as a prize. I think it was a prize for something.
Yeah, it was like an extra thing afterwards because you just had so much of it.
Yeah, and I presented it to Frith, and it was mistaken for a lovely, tasty treat, and it was promptly bitten into.
Yeah.
Which was
like it wasn't even a small crunch. It was like a full mouthful of it as well. Like it was.
Yeah, it was fully in half, I think.
Yeah.
Which for me, as a player looking in on this thing happening, it was very immersive.
As with regards to that, okay, I thought it was one of those big jelly sweets, because it was slightly squidgy when you squirt it, and I was like, oh, it's just a jelly. Yeah, it's just been out of the sun a bit, it's all good. And then I took a bite out of it, and then the wrapper came with it as well, and it was just like, oh. We probably ended that scene as I ran to the sink.
Precious mouth in Birchenall.
Yeah.
That day.
I would like it known that I've created a character trait that if I'm handed anything that I remotely think is edible, it's going in my mouth somehow.
Yeah, which
there will be a.
I'd love to play with that idea and bring some heinous things for you to bite into.
Yeah, just hand me a jelly bell, and I'm like, oh wow. It was like, oh, if you ring it and you don't even get to finish the sentence, I'm already eating into a brass bell.
The other memorable interaction I've had with you is, it wasn't great for you because you were suffering horrendous hay fever, but
I was, yeah.
When you turned up to our camp and said you'd gone blind.
Oh yeah, the ancestors have cursed me so. They are not plays.
Yeah.
I cannot see their will. And then I was rocking around with Ozzy Osbourne glasses for
great
2 days. Yeah.
And in reality, your eyeballs were bleeding out of your skull.
Yeah, they were not great. We learned what was doing it. It was Mexico orange blossom, and then I let PD know. I was like, "Hey, is there any of this plant in the field?" And they're like, "It's everywhere." And I'm like, "Great, good to know." And the stars that they went on an extermination. They just torched every single plant they could find.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there shouldn't be as much of it anymore. But there's still bits.
Next event, you'll find out.
Yeah. I'll touch it with my glove again and rub it in my eye like a real legend.
Brilliant. So yeah, we've had some fun with Frith for sure.
Yeah, we've had good times, both sides. It's been all right. We also learned that I don't like ale together as well. Learned that together. That was fun. Yeah.
Oh yeah, was that Frith?
Yeah.
We gave you. Yeah, I think we just gave you a drink, and you were like, "What's this?" And we're like, "Oh, it's just some ale." And you're like, "Seriously, what's this?" It's like, "It's ale." And you're like,
ale.
"What have you put in my cup?" It's like, "Trust me, it's just yeah."
It was like the most bitter thing I've ever drunk in my life. It wasn't even sour. It was just like, what the?
Maybe it was Chios bitter.
Maybe it was. Yeah. So that would explain it.
Yeah.
But
true.
That was a good time. Yeah, that's fine.
It was. Yeah.
Well, now we've got a bit of insight on you and Frith.
Yes.
You've already said quite a few things about Imperial Orc thingies, which we don't know about. So I don't know. Then this next question is a big one.
Yes.
What is the nation of the Imperial Orcs? So, I think maybe we start at the very beginning. You mentioned as Frith being a first generational orc.
Yeah.
We want to talk about how the orcs wound up in the Empire and then how they became nation people.
Okay.
Because
So,
it's something I learned recently, and it's actually a really cool sort of beginning story.
It's a darker piece of the Empire's history, which I don't think is going to go anywhere anytime soon. But it's a highlight of like, you may be the heroes of the Empire, but the Empire is still an empire. It still did some questionable things to get where it is now. But yeah, starting off, the Empire forms, and at some point during its formation, under like after the first Empress, orcs that are within the borders and outside of it stop being seen as another race, and they're just another thing. They're just they are an entity in of themselves and ready to be exploited. And at some point during the Empire's history, mass enslavement of the Orcish race occurred within the Empire, and it became a systemic system of, I'll give you some slaves to this, and it just became another resource to be traded. Nearly every single nation had slaves. The only ones that are questionable are Urizen, but a sheer fact of they already had an infinite workforce in the form of their constructs, which I don't remember the name of. Skitari? I don't know. The Skitari similar things, and the Brass Coast, who left for the fuel. Who left? I'm speaking too quickly. Who left Highguard for the same similar reason of they didn't want their liberties taken away. So taking orc slaves was kind of a betrayal there. So those are two of the really only nations to not enslave orcs.
The Ushabti, according to chat.
Ushabti, thank you. Yeah, they have their Ushabti, so they didn't really need slaves. They still sold them, but they weren't the same thing as the rest of the Empire. Winnemark had more household rules, like they'll just have a couple. It wasn't to the same extent of like others who were using them for profit. Winnemark just sort of had them as servants / helpers, just keeping an eye on stuff, doing the things that nobody else wanted to do. But this went on for like 300 years. The orcs that lived within the Empire itself before its founding, their cultures were completely wiped out through slavery. Like, there's the expression of like the 100 lost tribes, which is like just an expression of all of this culture and all this history completely wiped out by systematic enslavement of orcs. And the only links that we have to any form of culture have come from us doing it ourselves or from outside sources like the 4 major tribes that surround us. At about 60 years ago from the current setting, we just had the 60th anniversary. A major figure in our legend, named Facey, rallied the Orcish slaves of the north together as in a massive revolt against Farushka, Winnemark, Temeshwar, in this massive rebellion that became known as the First Rebellion. And they fought to be recognized essentially as people, as to no longer be a race of slaves. But that, after a long campaign of victories, they had one major battle that led to the complete disbandment of the First Rebellion. And either everyone was executed or it's implied that no one escaped, but there's like unofficial people escaping the battle. Because you can't catch everyone. Then about a couple months later, the slaves in the south within the rest of the League, Dawn, the Marches, High Guard, all began to rebel as well, because they heard the legend of Thrace and and they rebelled as well, but they were all field hands, gladiators, like people who were a bit more in a good place. They weren't laborers, they were more prepared, I would say, for a rebellion, without going into too much detail. And these continuous poppings up of massive rebellions, of massive armies just forming in rebellion against the Empire, led to Emperor Araz. There are two different versions. Either he granted us liberty, or he conceded to our demands. It depends on what side of the story you listen to. The Orcs, in their opinion, he conceded to our demands, and granted us our freedom. But a problem that we encountered was that we had no culture of our own. The other 4 tribes wouldn't take us because they're like, you're not our kin, you're mongrels.
I assume the other 4 tribes being the foreign orcs currently.
Yeah.
The Jotun,
the Fool, yeah. All them lot. They were like, we're not taking you. And they would actually execute us if we tried to emigrate into their lands. So with that situation arising, Araz and a lot of other people came together and invited the now liberated orcs to Anvil, where 1, they officialized the liberation, and 2, they formed the nation of the Imperial Orcs for the now freed orcs to have a tribe to belong to. And that's where it formed, around a nation without a homeland, but a tribe to belong to, which is our big thing, which is why we're all very loyal to our nation as a collective, because that is our tribe.
I just need to quickly point out that that is you behind us right now, isn't it?
That is, yes.
Yeah.
That is a little bit older Frith, from a little while ago, but that is a photo of me back when I was in different garments. As you can see, I'm very old. I'm very tired. I'm dealing with people I really don't want to deal with right now.
You're sick of this bear staff.
Yeah. It gets stuck on everything. I've broken it one too many times. But yeah, and then the nation formed, and it was, and ever since we've been evolving our objective as a tribe. We started off as, we need a homeland to call our own, and then we got Scarsinned, and then it was a case of, we need to show that we were worthy of getting a homeland, so we've improved it all the way. Like, it's actually full now. We can't put any more buildings in without opportunities. And now it's asserting our dominance so that we can never be enslaved again, and will never be a situation like that ever again. And that's where we're at now in the modern period of 1 territory. We're working on getting a second one without being political about it, and we're working on our 3rd army now. So we've come a long way from nothing.
Yeah, right.
They've got something to prove, the orcs, haven't they? That's
yeah.
Sort of. Which is, I feel like it's just really interesting and exciting to be an Imperial Orc, because your whole nation are trying to just achieve and do, which is cool. Another thing is, I didn't realise that it was so recent history. I assumed it was older, which, so Frith would have been
he fought in the rebellions. Yeah, he was 31 when it ended, something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's quite cool. I obviously being a player coming in to the game,
and
obviously slavery is spoken about, and it's like, oh yeah, that we don't do that here. That's bad. Slavery's bad, you know. But to not know, maybe that's just down to me not reading the wiki, but not knowing how recent history was, maybe that would change me as a Wintermarker.
Yeah,
my opinion on it, maybe I feel a bit more guilty about it and have
Yeah.
different opinions with the orcs, because I know we spoke previously about maybe there's still a bit of tension between orcs and humans, or orcs and Imperials. Perhaps there's still a bit of a friction there. And that makes a bit more sense now because it is so recent. But no, that's really, really interesting. Again, I didn't know that, so that's really quite cool to learn.
It's a point that is rather intrinsic to our standpoint. No matter where you stand on like modern slavery in the setting of Empire.
I was going to say, hopefully everyone's against it.
Yeah. And it rather drives home why there's such like a dogmatic culture of anti-slavery in the orcs. Like maybe not everyone's on the same page in enthusiasm, but everyone's on the same page of it's bad. It never again.
I guess in character setting, it's still very fresh, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, there's still orcs around currently that were ex-slaves. For some reason, I was thinking it was like 100 or 150 years ago. I didn't
no, it's only 60. Yeah. That's why Imperial Orcs wear their armbands and their neck wraps and their and because like Frith actually has those scars, and I haven't got fizz reps for them because it's effort. But if there was ever like a scenario where it was like you'd take the wraps off, you would see the scars, and a lot of second and third generation wear the wraps as respect to those, and we're never not going to wear them.
So you say second and third generation, that basically just implies literally generation. So you got your first generation of those who were slaves or were in the first rebellion, and the second and the third are kind of after that now. So the young kids coming through, and you got the old guard.
Yeah,
the first generation.
You'll hear a lot of a developed opinion, and you can notice where it developed along the way on a lot of topics, and you can tell sometimes by their responses of like, oh, you've been around a while, and then you start hearing it of there's a moderate view, and then there's a more stronger, more developed view as you go down. So no, Frith is first generation. After the nation was formed, we started having more people, and the second generation is around like 40 to 30 years of age, and then the new generation is like everyone else under like the age of 25. Like they're the next generation. That's not exact math, that's just a generalization, but that's generally how it goes, and they're influenced by different philosophies that we had at the time.
I know. When we spoke the other day, you said like how orc traditions shifts between the generations. I guess, like you said, the first generation going to be a lot more historically traditional, whereas the third generations are probably a bit more open-minded when it comes to the wider world. But another thing, you mentioned obviously the Imperial Orcs became a nation on paper without a physical homeland. And that's another really cool side to their history. So I know you kind of touched on it, but the Imperial Orcs obviously started or formed the legions, right?
Yes.
Before they had their home, and they were almost like wandering bands, right? And these legions would be fighting outfits. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first legion is a reassemblement of the first rebellion orcs who fought in that hit and run, free as many as we can, grow bigger. Like they're based on that. Whether or not they're formatted of like the survivors, I'm not really sure. But essentially they're emulating that strategy. And I think quite a few are from like from the officers that served under Frith at the time, and they've gathered them all up, and they're an inspired army. And then the second legion is all the southern orcs who wore like more armor, were more traditional discipline army, more like we will form lines and fight on the battlefield. That's the second legion. There is sort of the expression of the first legion of warriors and the second legion of soldiers, sort of thing. Like it's just they still engage in that martial element. They just have different fundamentals and ideologies when it comes to fighting, and it's replicated in their special orders as well.
Yes, I was looking at the legions, and obviously, yeah, they're characteristically different and mechanically different. And I didn't know. Well, obviously, you just explained why, and that's obviously quite cool to the fact that they've slotted it into sort of an in character history, which is really interesting. And again covering they got so the orcs eventually find a home in Scarsind, right?
Yes, following a lot of RP and a lot of politics and a lot of working around things.
And Scarsind, so I think Scarsind, Mark, was handed over probably, I'm going to guess, a couple of events before we started.
I believe it was the event, the event year before. It might have been. It might have been the. I started in E4 3. I think it was 379, and I think that was the year it was given.
Was it 2017? Right, we started.
Yeah.
September 2017. Yeah. So, so obviously Scarsind was an imperial territory which belonged to Wintermark, right? So
originally,
I don't know the ins and outs of it, but
essentially
they gifted it to Imperial Orcs. Maybe that's because Wintermark is trying to make themselves sound really generous. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a complicated story. The technicals of it were Scarsind was originally a Wintermark territory. Then the Fool invaded and took it over, and it became a Fool territory. Then when we liberated it, it became an opportunity to resolve a problem. And in exchange for the Crown of Three Tiers and a bunch of other role-play and packs and other things, in exchange for the crown, the Orcs exerted their claim on Scarsind, and Wintermark agreed, and we have documents and everything on it, which pretty much just state, like, from this point forward, blah, 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 Scarsind is the Imperial Orc land in exchange for the crown. And that's generally how it went down. So now, from then till forever, essentially, Scarsind is now the homeland of the Imperial Orcs. Not just in name, in like practical element of the amount of things we've built, and now we have a home, and we've built. We've reinforced the old cities. We've built more than enough sinecures and great works in it to be like, no, this is.
So, and also, you've kind of touched. I don't know if we should be talking about it, but you kind of mentioned about trying to secure a second territory, which again is pretty cool. And the way I obviously conquest is a way. So I guess when the Empire take a foreign territory, then it's put up to vote on who should be gifted that territory, like what nation should get it, right?
Yeah.
So that's a way of doing it, which is quite cool. And the fact that the Empire, maybe touch wood, are doing sort of well combat-wise. I say that like I've read the Winds of War, but I don't know. But we seem to be pushing them back, like potentially snatching a new territory isn't unrealistic soonish. So that would be interesting.
We definitely have places that we're very interested in. It's just a matter of politicizing, bullgowning, doing everything that we need to do to set that up, and then when it happens, then we put the mean face on. It's like, no, we want that. We need that.
So to quickly, you said about you've done a lot of construction stuff in your territory, which is anyone can do, right? Where you improve, you build.
Not me personally, the royal. I
want to ask a question out of curiosity. Obviously, the Imperial Orcs get an Imperial Wayleaf.
We do, yeah. The Legionnaire.
So, if anyone don't know what Imperial Wayleaf is, that's almost like a ticket for a construction slot, right?
Yeah.
If you have an Imperial Wayleaf, you can build something, right?
Yeah.
That's really basic, and it's not that basic, but we'll leave it there because
it's a whole topic in and of itself. But
how come the Imperial Orcs get an Imperial Wayleaf?
I think what you were getting at is they're rare, expensive, but the Orcs automatically get.
Am I right in thinking there's only 2 Imperial or 3 Imperial Wayleafs per season that are available? 1 through the Imperial Orcs, and 2 I think are auctioned. So yeah, they're pretty rare. But anyway, that's just Just wondering why the Imperial Orcs get an Imperial Wayleaf. It's just quite interesting, as like from my experience in the game. Yeah, and maybe that's why the Imperial Orcs have done so well on improving their infrastructure in their territory. Is what I was getting at.
Yeah, it's definitely helped. Like the Legionnaire Engineer, which is currently occupied by our lovely Dave Bleakshield Grozer. It was made in 382 in the summer.
Oh, so
fairly new, yeah. It was created to resolve the problem of we have a lot to do. We have a lot to build and a lot to sort out all at once. And we only have one senator. We're the only nation that has one, so we can't put in as many.
Okay. So I assume this was an opportunity that came up in the game, and you guys jumped on it.
Yeah, 100%. It was a mechanic that was offered to us, so we took it immediately.
Well, that makes sense. I forgot that. Yeah, so senators, right? You get a senator per territory you have, right?
Yeah, you only get one.
So you guys only have one territory, so
Yeah,
Wintermark has 3, for example, because we have 3 territories.
I think it was noted that a lot of the time our senatorial slot was just always occupied by we're building a new thing. That's what we're doing. And then they noticed that, so they interpreted our very strong concentration on building more and more, and they gave us that opportunity. I wasn't there for that opportunity, but I believe that's what came about, and we took it to be able to build more.
That makes sense because it frees your senator up to do something else. And I guess the Imperial Orcs are going to want to be sort of, I don't know, gaining political favors and stuff with other nations, because that's how you guys want to grow and expand, right? You want to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was cool. It's just a question. It just came into my head and I thought I'd ask it.
Fair enough.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right, where are we? So the actual nation. So now we know where the Orcs came from and where they reside.
Yeah.
I guess the next one is going to be sort of archetypes.
Yeah.
Look and feel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, look and feel is
Yeah,
very unique, isn't it, for the Imperial Orcs?
Yeah, we're
obviously we have a different race, which is the Imperial Orcs.
Yeah.
So should we talk about look and feel and the Orc race, and then slip into archetypes?
Yeah, I think going orcs first. Like, what is an orc?
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like that's the best way to go. Right? Otherwise, we're just going to keep rolling back.
Yeah.
So, unlike in our world where there was Homo sapien and Homo Neanderthal, we are completely different originating races. Like, we have no ancestry whatsoever, and we are just, there are humans and the varying lineages, and then there are just orcs. And essentially an orc is a very complicated thing, because not only do they have a lot of physical characteristics that are completely different to humans, they have a lot of spiritual and magical and all sorts of differences that put them apart from humans. So the first thing is we have different skin completely. Like, whereas humans have their softer, more
Fleshy skin.
Fleshy skin, yeah, we have more. It's not a lot, but it's more like a leathery hide sort of skin. It's more denser. It's not nice to touch, essentially. We also are a little more denser. We're not stronger, we're just a bit more able to take a hit and not really worry about it too much. We're also a little more immune to like common diseases, so our immune system's a little better, which means if we actually take care of ourselves, we live a bit longer as well, but not by a lot. It's just we won't get killed by a cold or something.
What about allergies?
Oh, allergies suck. We still get that. Whereas the standard of a human is to have hair, the standard of an orc is actually to be bald, and it's actually like uncommon or slightly more common than uncommon to have hair, and it's always like either on the top of your head or like it starts from the back down. You never have it like around the sides of your temples. We just don't grow their hair for some reason. As well, orcs are mood-wise, we're a lot more domineering, a lot more as a race, just generally get to the point quite heavily. We're doing it, it's happening, we're having this conversation, and it will occur, and things like that. As well, non-religious questioning, orcs do not go to the same afterlife as humans at all. And that's a fact across the entire race. It's not just like, we believe so, it's a case of no. They generally all go to the abyss, or they become insert ancestor here, which is unique to orcs as well. And generally, yeah.
I have
Go on.
Before we go on, I have a brief question about that. I don't know if it's a quick answer or not, but
Yeah.
do orcs follow the virtues?
Yes.
Okay.
Orcs, most orcs, like most Imperial orcs, follow the way in some form or fashion. Like, some will be more like, yeah, virtues all the way, while others are like, it is technically the religion of the realm, so by law I must follow it. But we do need to do different things to guarantee our version of an afterlife. Otherwise, we go to the abyss. So
yes,
some believe that doing virtuous action will guarantee you ancestorhood, but some believe they're separate intrinsically. But it's a whole bag of grapes in of itself. What I was gonna say is, a thing which is unique to orcs is where, as humans, as they get older, they get more susceptible to things. Like, they get more tired as they get older, they get more in pain, they degenerate a bit. Orcs kind of stay the same up until 60. So as soon as they finish puberty, they are that way as they were, and there won't be any going downhill. They'll be at the peak of their performance. When they reach 60, they change color. No matter what. Like, you could be brown, you could be like jet black, you could be the variety of other colors. You could be like the pale sort of color. No matter what, when you turn like 60-ish, you will turn white in some fashion. Either it will be overnight or it gradually creeps up on you. You will, all the melanin or whatever, all the pigment in your skin will turn bleach white. And you will then become an elder. And then about like 20, 30 years after 60, you start going downhill. And it rushes you quite quickly. And the decline of health around 100 is very immediate. It's very like knock after knock after knock until you die, essentially.
So Frith is on the cusp.
He's on his way, yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a few problems already, but instead of it gradually occurring, it will just hit you round the head with it, and then you have a problem. And that's that's the lifestyle of an orc, essentially.
I imagine from a creating a new character point of view, that's quite handy, because if you're if you're feeling a change, don't necessarily take Wintermark for example. The arguably fastest way in character to get rid of a character is to go on as many skirmishes as you can and try and die. Whereas if you're an old orc and you have rapid decline in health at that age, you can sort of explain away, you know.
Yeah, they just
Fuck it, I'll try breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah, just keel over in the middle of Murder Alley.
It is somewhat, I would say arguably, somewhat of a dream of many who fought for so many years just to die quietly. Like, have their legend secure and just die in a way which is dignified, like a dignified, quiet rest. Obviously, there's dying for the worthiness of your nation. But also there's also just the availability of just being like, well, I am like nearly 100. I think it is my time to shut my eyes for a bit.
Yeah.
And we've had a few people who are just like, he got old and killed over one day. You can go say goodbye to them, but they are gone. But most of the time, as quite a heavily martial nation, a lot of our deaths are on the battlefield, so we don't really get to that point.
Yeah.
Which, due to that lifestyle, elders get a little bit of, like, not a major amount, just like a little bit of respect because they've lived that long. It's like you never died on the battlefield. It's major respect. Whether or not they take you seriously is a completely different matter, but they will give you like a modicum of leeway in everything you do. And yeah, that's generally old age. I think some things which the orc species are not. We don't have tusks. If you have a really long tooth, someone will come rip it out because it means you're dying or have a disease. We are not 40k orcs. We don't go war. There is no great war. We like fighting, but not because it's fun. It's just in our blood. And we're also not Mordor, Lord of the Rings orcs. There are we do not serve the Dark Lord. There's no Saruman. We are not evil for evil's sake. We are just a race of orcs who are perfectly capable of good or evil in of our own. And that's generally it.
Just like the humans.
Yes, like the humans. Like, we're just a bit more stern and more likely to, if we have a problem with you, we'll let you know.
Yeah. So while we're on the subject of look and feel, let's talk about the masks.
The masks, yes.
Especially since it looks like we're going to have a quite warm E2.
Yes. The thing about the masks, some people don't like the claustrophobia. I'm alright with it. I'm actually comfortable being enclosed. People are always like, oh, the latex, I can't handle the mask. It's like, it's not the mask, it's the heat. The heat will kill you. The biggest thing for Imperial Orc players is heat stroke. That's the big panic. Like, we've had people break legs and come back to the field and it's not a problem, but people having a heat stroke, that just knocks them out of the whole event. Generally, you want to avoid that. You will... The mask getting sweaty and you being wet from just drenching yourself continuously in sweat. You can deal with that. You can swap clothes. You can sort all that out. If the mask's too big, you can modify it to be slightly smaller. If the mask is too small, again, you can modify it. But heat control is the big problem. Because a lot of us are wearing leather. I wear a fur coat. And also the fact of some medications that fuck with heat control anyway. So you're in a sarcophagus of your own making. You're hot the entire time, but gradually you don't notice it. But that's when you gotta keep an eye on yourself, because if you aren't noticing it, and then you go over the limit, that's when you need to sort yourself out. So a lot of the time it's there are points where it's just a case of it's alright to just take your mask off. It's fine. You don't have to have it on the whole time. I'm one of the crazy ones who has it on all the time. You can take it off.
I guess when it comes to safety, yeah.
Yeah, if you've got to take it off, take it off.
Yeah, I guess in case there's anybody watching this that, is new to Empire and maybe hasn't interacted with orcs in the orc camp and stuff. Obviously, we're talking about taking masks off and stuff. Is there specific areas that people would go, or is it a case of if the mask has got to come off, the mask has got to come off? I've always been under the impression that, which I think has possibly changed recently, but it used to be the orc camp was maybe not as easily always accessible as some other areas of the field, just purely because people playing orcs sometimes need to take their mask off, and it's just not to break immersion.
Yeah, that's sort of an element there. It's also because orcs are naturally superstitious of people who are coming in their homes randomly. They're a lot less about they're a lot less about like, this building is my home, and they're more about this general area is my home. Why are you in my home? It's also to allow people who are to take their masks off, essentially. Like, they'll go off to like a secluded area of the camp and take their mask off, or they'll hide behind a tarp or be in a tent, or they'll whip up their hood as much as they can and hide their face as much as they can and just take a minute, take a chill pill.
Yeah.
There are other areas, and it's dependent on your camp. Like, some camps are perfectly okay for you to just take 10 minutes off, like outside of the orc camp, just to chill out, just put your hood on and get on with what you were doing. Out of character stuff, like, it's okay to just like be, I don't know, it's a hot event, you're in public, and it's okay to just like put your hand up, take the mask off, and be like, I'm not playing right now, it's too hot, I'm gonna go chill out. And that's all right, just put your hand up and then you'll be off. No one have a go at you at all. It's just a case of it's like 40 degrees, something odd, go take a break, hide somewhere, do what you got to do.
I guess, yeah, it's not something we've really spoken about, but like the whole putting your hand up, it's sort of a universal sign for out of character.
Yeah,
it's covered across the game in lots of different ways. But yeah, I never thought of it as an Imperial Orc. Yeah, if you just need your time out, but you're in the middle of a nation or something, chuck your hand up. Because then as soon as you put your hand up and you're out of character, then like in theory, like you're not there.
Yeah, it's just like, I've mysteriously disappeared. I've teleported.
I think that does raise a good point as well, that it is a game, and I think when you're there, you do forget that sometimes that it is just a game.
Yeah,
because it's so huge and immersive.
And again, with the Imperial Orcs, like they are so immersive. Like, you're not seeing someone in a mask half the time. You're seeing an Imperial Orc, which sometimes you just got to remember that.
You just like, it's a real danger, and we're trying to encourage people to just be like, it's okay, you're having a great time, we all are, but please don't die.
Don't burn yourself up.
Yeah,
I think it's worth like saying potentially, like if you're thinking about doing the Imperial Orcs, unsure about the mask, rather than dropping 50-60 quid on a new mask, like when we monster in the field, PD supply masks. So the best way to get an idea of it is go do some monstering, use a PD mask. Obviously they're not going to fit as well as to you. Like a lot, Robbie, like if you have your own mask, you're going to be tweaking it here and there and making it fit a bit snugger. But I mean, if you want to go spend a couple of hours in a big battle in a monster mask, then you're going to have an idea of what it is like to wear a mask. So rather than investing in a mask and then realizing, no, it's not for me.
Well, that's the thing as well. If you can wear a crew mask, you're probably going to be finding a custom-made mask.
Like we always say, like when trying out the mask, you're just doing it to check that it's a case of you can handle the exertion. It's not the comfortableness, it's just that, because the PD masks, though a godsend, are not very comfortable after like the 6th or 7th use. But when you got your own one, you can do whatever you want to it. You can dunk it in a bucket of water to clean it. You can
I know it's like common people tend to like cut them. Like for example, my mask, I need to put it on and have a play with it because it doesn't quite fit right. But it's quite common, like people open their mouths up a bit or maybe over the eyes, So
I need to on my monstering mask I need to change because at the moment it sort of sits here and I get like really sore lips anyway. So like the downside is going to be like having face paint on there as well. I've tried before. It really irritates my face.
Yeah, my mask sort of rides up slightly, so I'd need to figure out, I don't know, how to get it fitting a bit there. But yeah, I mean, that's another fun game of the Imperial Orcs.
Yeah,
it's just kit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just another bit of kit you just got to play with. We've got tons of people who know how to help you with your mask, how to make it bigger, how to make it smaller, how to sort out your eye holes, how to help you hear better because you can't hear in those things.
Yeah.
And it just adds to the culture of we will shout sometimes. We're not mad at you, we just can't hear what we're saying or what you're saying. We're like, what? And it's just once you're certain you can rely on yourself and sort yourself out, then get a mask that's comfy. And only then. Don't get it because you're like, oh, I'll give it a go. Just do it when you're like, I'm 100%, I can do it. There's no problem.
And then I think this where we spoke earlier about like Discord and stuff comes in great because you can go on there and talk to Imperial Orcs on about where they get their masks, where they get them made. Because
there are so many retailers now.
There is a certain style of mask that's kind of required, right? Which is a balaclava mask.
Yeah, it either has to be a full head or a half and half.
Yeah,
you can't use prosthetics. That's a big no.
Yeah, I've seen someone whilst monstering had their own sort of mask, and it was sort of just an upper part mask, and they were told they can't use it. But so yeah, it's worth obviously making sure you're investing in the right one.
Yeah.
And again, there's lots of different masks out there, but going on the Orc species wiki, it will kind of give a description of what facial features they have, so you can sort of make sure you're getting the right mask, not one that's going to look a bit odd.
100%. Generally, the ones I can recommend are Ungerbuild. They do wonderful masks. If you want to go for a more generic one, LARP and Epic Armories do really basic ones that you can just get. They're not too expensive. They're more just like you want to start playing a character but don't have the highest amount of income just to drop like a couple £100 on a good mask. Just get one of those. They're all right. And they're pretty much everywhere. If you just type in Orc masks, like you're pretty good. They'll come up, and you just got to go through them. The main thing you want is either solid latex. If you're allergic to latex, they do silicone masks, but they're a little more tricky and expensive. So you may need a specialist for that one. And the half and half balaclava mask that they do. And those
mine was from Dogbane. And I think it was like £50 or £60. So and maybe that's sort of an entry level mask. I don't know. I don't know how much you can go with spending on masks, but I think about that for your first mask isn't bad.
Yeah. What's nice about the Orcs is like it's reflective of like PD's policy of kit's progressive. Like you start with your standard affair, then you get better as you go. And I think the last thing people generally change out is their mask, unless there's something critically wrong with it. It's usually the last thing to go. And also don't feel bad about changing your mask. We have a like saying of, oh, you've seen the skin molder. You've had your skin molded. How does it feel? Yes, good. And it's just you may get some like fun jabs about it. It's like, oh, you got new hair. You didn't have hair before. You may get like casual bits, but it's not malicious. It's just moving on with it.
Everyone gets it, don't they? They're all in the same. So,
But moving on further with like the rest of the look and feel stuff.
Before we do that, does anyone want to take a 5-minute break? We are just at the halfway point.
Oh yeah. We could take a 5-minute thing.
Yeah.
Let's have a 5-minute break.
I might put the kettle on.
Ooh.
Fair play.
Cool. So we'll be back in 5. Stay tuned for more orky things.
More orc stuff.
And we're back with, well, I've got a coffee. I don't know about you guys. I'm having a very late coffee.
Fair enough. That may be a dangerous option in these times.
Yeah.
Oh, and like a new coffee mug.
Yes, my
Fair enough.
Charbucks coffee.
Nice.
Right. We're back. So I thought
Yeah,
we'd quickly mention sort of orky clothing because we haven't. But
Yes.
you can kind of get an idea from all the pictures in the behind us of these orc clothes and stuff.
Yep.
And it's kind of, would you say it's written in the brief that they orcs sort of believe in repairing their sort of clothing themselves?
Yeah.
So it maybe has a bit more of a ragtag look and
Yeah.
feel. perhaps.
Generally, it's a lot of. You'll have like your banner's official style of things. So you may be drawing influence from the Druge style or the Jotun style, or more from an imperial nation because you're originally slaves from that nation, and it will be stuff like that. And generally, it's just either you will fix it or the bone setter will fix it, which we'll get into later. But generally, it's either you do it or someone else does it, and it won't be like as if it wasn't broken. It will still have that indication. It will just work. A lot of orc kit is just it works. It's fine. We don't need to touch it for another couple of years.
And going on slightly, so you're talking about banners, each different banner that orcs belong to.
Yeah.
Obviously, like a bit like Wintermark with our halls, we have an emblem and stuff.
Yeah.
Like the orc banners have the same. And am I right in thinking that it's not necessarily like you've got a perfect stamp that you stamp on every person's
Oh
armor?
yeah.
Like each orc does their own sort of representation of that symbol. So
Yeah. It's
you
it's
might
enough
find
that
they're each slightly different, but
yeah, it's like you know what you're looking at, and it's like, oh, that's a red fist, that's the red hands, but they're all slightly a little different. Or
Yeah.
you're looking at the dead horse head. I'm gonna say horse head. The dead horse head, and then you're like, oh, that's a dead horse head. That's the Iron Tide. I know what that is, but it's not their like official symbol. It's like it kind of looks like a horse head.
yeah.
And stuff like that. It doesn't have to be 100%.
Yeah, but so that, yeah, you kind of find a sort of change between
Yeah.
orcs, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Which again, another cool kind of thing, you know, which I liked anyway.
But yeah, if you're wanting to get kit together, have a chat with one of the groups, or if you're making a group, come up with a kit concept. Generally,
And we said about it earlier as well. A kind of a must for the orcs is the wrist wraps, leg wraps, and neck wraps, which obviously I see is to reflect sort of the sort of wounds from being in chains, right, as slaves.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it actually says it on the wiki or that's what, but OC, it's those sort of skin points, isn't it?
yes, it's the parts that are going to show up when you move.
Yeah. So if you've got your mask on, obviously, if you've got a top on like mine, you're going to see the neck. So these wraps cover that up. And if you're wearing gloves, you know, it covers your wrists. So OC and IC, there's reasons for it. So that they're a must, I guess, which you can see in the picture behind us. In fact, like they've got a neck wrap on and stuff. So that's I think that's probably alongside the mask.
Yeah. You're also going to want to get a war skirt, and that's going to be like the iconic thing of the rest of you. It's your mask, your war skirt, and then everything else.
Your war skirt's kind of like your character as well, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, you'll hang a lot of your items of worth from your war belt. You get everything sorted, and it's all on there. A war skirt's just the easiest way to do a war skirt. Is just you get a belt, you get scrap piece of the leather, you sew it all together, slap it on, got a war skirt. It's not. You can get really well done ones, and you can get ones that you've done in an afternoon, and both are very valid.
So last event, there was a trader selling leather war skirts, and they were phenomenal. They looked incredible. However, I'm pretty sure they are between £300 and £400. So looked absolutely amazing, but they were mega bucks.
Yes.
I'm going to sell the one that I made for Monstering, if that's the case.
No, these looks good. Like I actually
Oh,
picked
okay,
up.
not like the one I made then.
No,
Yeah.
no, yours looks rubbish. No,
Yeah. No, the one I had made and I still have was 35 quid from a mate.
Mm.
So if you just chat to people and ask them about what's going on, they'll send you diagrams, they'll send you information, they may even send you kit you can use.
I just bought a chainmail one at last event for like 65 quid, which I think I'm gonna bolt leather onto and go from there.
It's a good idea.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's just mask. From head to toe, it's mask, tunic, arm wraps, war skirt, trousers, leg wraps, boots. That's really all you need to start playing, and then anything else is banner specific.
Mm. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. That's
So-
generally kit.
Kit sort of covered. Kit covered.
Yeah.
I guess we'll chat about archetypes. Like you've mentioned Bonesetter, you've mentioned Oathright. I guess we sort of rattle through. Should we start with Oathright because Frith is an Oathright?
Yes. So, an Oathright is one of our magical traditions, though they're one of the more magician types rather than being a ritualist or a battle person. They're more just a mage more often than not. You can throw ritual stuff into it, but meh. So an Oathright is rather a short statement for a very complicated thing. An Oathright can occupy many roles which the others don't. They sort of fill in where things are needed. So generally, they're a diplomat. They're a diplomat who goes out and sees to what's going on within the world. So they'll either a situation within a ban has appeared and a pact has not been honoured in some fashion, and then they'll come in and try and negotiate the issue. Or they'll go out and something between the orcs as a nation and a human nation has occurred, and Oathrights will go over and try and deal with that. Oathrights believe that the bonds that we create are important and affect both people in regards to items that are bonded to people and also people bonded to their oaths. And that's where the oath in Oathright comes from, of you make a promise to do a thing in regards to either like joining the banner to promise to protect the meek, to guard the safety of the empire, and you must hold yourself accountable for that oath. And that's their entire thing of making sure that the bonds between others are strong, but also the promises that you make, and also the items that you generate through your deeds are affecting the right people. Oathrights also handle quite a lot of the worth tradition, because you bond items of worth to people, those bonds affect others, so on and so forth, and it keeps going. The wearer of worth is sort of chief, like the head person of the rest of the Oathrights, but it's more of a administrative position rather than your boss sort of thing. It's just they're there to organize everything, and they may exert some influence over what you're doing, but generally it's just a I'm in charge of the operations, but I'm not in charge of you sort of thing. And yeah, so an Oathright, like I said, may be called in if there's a disagreement in a pact, or may be called in to form a pact. They may be the person to write up the oath. They may be called in to find an item's value and who it would benefit most. They also tend to be the people that you call on to deal with Eternals, as well as like more out there, like Grauka, who is the Archmage of Day. She is an Oathright who handles communications quite thoroughly with the Eternals of Day, and also Eternals will also try and contact Oathrights on occasion. Like the Iron Duke may issue a challenge, so on and so forth, things like that. They generally just talk to person A about topic B, resolve situation, wherever that may be. And that's generally an Oathright. They're kind of whereas a shaman is more of within the spiritual realm, Oathrights are more within this world of reality and more in keeping things customary rather than more spiritual influence. If that makes sense. I guess moving on from that.
I was going to say, we're moving on. It's worth saying there is actually 9 archetypes for the Imperial Orcs.
There are a lot.
To Navarre. Was Navarre had like 4 or 5?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, tiny. So yeah, Imperial Orcs, you guys got 9. I thought, should we quickly talk about Warlord? Because
yes,
the Warlord, maybe that's a more simple.
Yeah, that's quite an easy one. So in Orc culture, to belong to an identity is most important. Whether that's the identity of the nation or a group is irrelevant. It is you represent something and you belong to something. So where we have the legions, like the 2 legions, we have our groups, which are called legions, but because of that confusion, we also call them banners or war bands.
So the 2 main legions are the current armies of the Imperial Orcs, right?
Yes.
And then, yeah, like you said, that's what I found extremely confusing when making a character in Imperial Orcs. They reference legions, like, were you part of either of the legions, which are the 2 armies? And then they reference legions as in banners, and it's just a bit confusing.
Generally, it's each group would choose its own sort of referral. But generally, it's your warlord is the leader of your war band, generally. And the warlord is just that. They are the leader and guider of your group, essentially. They will help you in the ways that you need help doing your thing. And they will do that applied to everyone under their care. They also will try and speak for you in your best interest in Warlord's meet and as the collective group as a whole. They're kind of they don't have a specific mechanic outside of that. They are mainly here to lead.
So kind of like Wintermark, they're the Thanes, which are head of the houses. Or I guess, am I right in thinking, like with Dawn, you got Earls?
Yes.
So Warlords are basically you said it.
There's there's a little bit of flavor of like Orcs appreciate authority, and then they also like to establish what the pecking order somewhat is in their own society. And the Warlord's kind of there to make sure everyone's in line under them and making sure that their banners may be more higher up in the pecking order, as it were. Like everyone's equal, but it's more just like more just the prestige, I guess, of the group. I don't know the word for it.
Definitely. So not a nice easy one. Do we want to talk about, only because you've already referenced them?
Yes.
Reavers.
Reavers are a interesting topic because it is a dependent on what generation you're from graduates your opinion on a Reaver. Essentially, the bare bones of a Reaver is one who chooses to not serve the legions as in a traditional role. They choose to go outside of it, do jobs or careers independent of the legions, and then support the nation through those escapades. So it could vary from you just chose to go do mercenary work in the League for some reason, and then you gave your money back to the nation, or like a large portion of it. Or you may have gone off sailing and exploring and you've brought back riches in some form. It's sort of the more you're doing your own thing.
It says on the wiki that like the Reavers are going to possibly be more well off than normal legionary orcs because of they chose that life. And again, you mentioned like, I guess you could like the first generation orcs don't like Reavers very much because they're very committed to the Legion, but then these sort of third generational orcs probably don't mind it as much.
Yeah, it's very much because Reavers essentially represent themselves. There's that mild aura of what's going on there, but we still love our fellow orcs. It's just a case of they're doing things which we don't quite understand. And anyone can become a Reaver, and anyone can stop being a Reaver at any time. Because you may have a disagreement with the Legion and go away for a few years and then come back later and return. And then everything that you did as a Reaver is kind of brushed under the table because you have returned to the fold. But if you remain a Reaver the rest of your life, you still get quite a bit of ire from people who are Legionnaires. And it's just a bit of fun. It's just a bit of... You're all supporting the nation somehow, you're just doing it in different ways.
Less traditional ways.
Yeah. And some may have problems with it.
Yeah.
But Reavers are not criminals. They just are the odd ones out, as it were. There are Reaver bands, which are entire groups of Reavers. So you can do it like that, but essentially it's just something that you do.
And as you said the word criminal, we can segue into thief takers.
Yes. A thief taker is the embodiment of an orc will try and avoid to not commit a crime if they know it's a crime. If they don't know what they're doing is wrong, that's different. But they will try and follow the law as best they can because they respect being true to those that you are bound to. So
I think when we spoke the other day, we were kind of saying like thief takers were sort of like vigilantes that take the law into their own hands.
Yeah.
Right?
Somewhat.
I remember wrong.
They are somewhat of... They're a little complicated. They are designed as somewhat bounty hunters in the fact of someone has committed a crime or has done something which requires someone to retrieve them, and then they will be hired to retrieve that person and enforce Imperial justice. However, it's more of a case of they will do their main thing now is to enforce the law from a less malicious standpoint of they will not threaten you with trial, they will just enforce the law against you, and they will be rewarded for doing that. And that's sort of what they've become. And yeah, they're generally just if you need someone found, you will hire a thief taker to get them found. Whether that's good or bad, you'll hire a thief taker.
Awesome.
They're very, they're very like a light one.
Do you want to? Should we? I'm gonna just save a couple to the end because I think one is the one I'm interested in, and two is another cool one. So I think at the moment we're left with Shaman and Warcaster, and and Preacher. So should we say Warcaster? Talk about Warcasters because I feel like that's quite self-explanatory as well.
Yeah, it is rather. So Warcasters are individuals who our version of a battle mage, essentially. They are entirely dedicated to using magic to fight our wars. Implicitly, that's what they are. It's in their name. Most will go in and use their repels and shatters and entangles, and they are the bulk of our magical core, and will support or be the elements that try and bring down everything. You can also be a non-combative warcaster and be more within a essence of you are going to buff the armies, for example, and be a force of supportive conflict for others. and that's another way you can do it. And it's a lot of just doing things related to conflict through magical means. Like we have quite a few warcasters, and they generally get on quite well. And
I kind of feel like the Imperial Orcs archetypes are pretty much covering pretty much most aspects of the game. You've got like your battle mage, your warlord stuff, which is kind of like Thaney / I guess military focus, and then I thought another one to talk about would be the shamans, because I'm trying to quickly think about what I know about them, and I think I got it wrong. So shamans are interesting.
Yes. So the shaman and the preacher sort of.
That's what it. Yeah.
If I cover them at the same time, that would probably work. So, like I said earlier, within the orc species, the orcs don't go to the labyrinth no matter what. That's just a racial thing. They go to the abyss. Now, the shamans argue that the road to ancestorhood would be through more traditional orc values, whereas the preachers will more argue that the way is the way forward to ancestorhood. But that's sort of here and there. So a shaman,
old school and new school when it comes.
Rules of thought around it. Neither of them deny the other existing. So a shaman won't turn around and be like, the way is fake, it's not real. It's like they won't do that. They may question it and say that it may not hold value to them becoming an ancestor, but they'll never deny the way doesn't exist. There is also the fact of the preacher will never turn around and be like, the ancestors aren't real, because they know they're real, and that is an intrinsic part of our afterlife. So they sort of come in together. So they are, like I said, two ends of different spectrums. So a shaman is given the gift, or the curse, depending on who you ask, to hear the ancestors all the time. So whereas a normal orc will only hear it in heated emotions, or in battle, or in conflict of any kind, a shaman hears it all the time. So some of them go a bit crazy. Because it's not just when you're awake, it's when you're asleep. It's all the time, and they will tell you whispers, and they'll give you advice, they'll tell you everything. But they're the ones you go to confirm sometimes if a voice is too quiet for you to feel that who that ancestor may be. And then they will help you to establish a stronger bond with that ancestor, and so on, and go down the road of encapsulating that. A preacher is a member of the synod, is an orc who has chosen the path of who has not received that gift, but has chosen to involve themselves in spirituality and wants to understand that whole process. Each preacher has their sort of own philosophy. Like you have Udu, who's like traditional values within the synod. Whereas you have other people who are like, virtues will guarantee you ancestorhood. And that's sort of the varying swing.
Yeah, kind of going back with Orc Afterlife then. So the whole idea is if you upheld these sort of Orc tradition or values, that's going to help you cross the abyss.
Yeah.
And like I said, I guess if you're a real good Orc and you did a real great job, then you can kind of cross it and become an ancestor.
Yeah.
And guide future Orcs, right? So, you got the shaman preaching the sort of the traditional Orc side of it, and then I guess the new sort of these preachers have come in now, and they're saying, well, the way we can do it with the way, like by using following the virtues, we're still being good Orcs, right?
Yeah, quintessentially, yeah.
So
it's all about the principle of worth, which all orcs within the Imperial Orcs follow. And worth is the value...
Magic, right?
Yeah, it's a half magic.
Half magic, sorry.
So the way worth works. So unlike heroism, which is you do the thing and it's cool, or glory, it's like you did the thing and then you get celebrated for doing the thing and it's cool. Worth is you did a thing so beneficial or so impactful to your legend that it has transcended the events in that moment and it is valued by the others within your legend. So items of worth are when someone did a deed or something occurred historically that was so impactful that the situations of that event have impacted on that item, and if someone uses that item in a similar way, it will empower them or inspire them to act in that way that it was generated in that moment. And this could be a really good thing or a really bad thing. So if
you could have an item of worth that has a sort of a negative feel to it.
Yeah,
And
like you can.
Maybe if you carried that item, then that could affect you.
It would encourage you to act that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, an example is if a crown was owned by a tyrant and was cruel, and you carried that item with you continuously, it would encourage you to be tyrannical and cruel.
So could you use an item of worth almost like a curse?
Somewhat, yeah.
So you could be like, for whatever reason, we're making you carry this till the end of your days, and it's just not a great thing to be carrying. Maybe as a punishment if you're a real bad orc.
Yeah. If you're really deserving of it, you'll be given an item of worth that you need to it will either condemn you or you will purify it in some fashion. Of like you will change its legend, as it were. And the whole thing is about just doing good things, and it's believed that the more items of worth you generate, doesn't matter if they're good or bad, just generally, the more you generate and they're of upstanding worth, you will become an ancestor. However, where the preachers come in is that they believe that either there's a correlation between doing worthy deeds and doing virtuous deeds are similar enough to be the same thing, or it's the fact of the virtues are 100% worthy in those deeds, and you don't need to do the other things. You just need to be virtuous. And there's a wide range of opinions, and there's a wide range of beliefs and structural understandings of it, and it's such an impactful thing of like there's a bit of a not a divide, but there's like a bit of a theoretical split between either you support shamans who are very traditional in their manner and very like worth is worth and such things, and also oathrights are also in that position as well, but less from a theoretical and philosophical standpoint and more in the fact of this is an item of worth and this is what the item of worth did. It's more that the shamans handle the more philosophical thing of X ancestor did this deed and that helped them become an ancestor, whereas the preachers are like, well, what they did was courageous, and so we can clarify that as being what helped them become an ancestor, and that's that whole argument there. There is no in between becoming an ancestor and going in the abyss. You either go in the abyss or become an ancestor, and the abyss sucks. It is awful, and no orc wants to go there.
Which inspires you to be good orcs and
try your best and
try your best.
Do you know anyone who's gone there?
That's the thing. It is assumed everyone goes there unless you hear them. So if you don't hear them, they go there.
Okay.
There is a continuous fear among all orcs, including Frith, that you get those moments of fear that you are going to the abyss because of what you've done.
So, a pure OC thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not OC. It's OC. If I became an orc, right? Whenever down the line, Frith kicks a bucket, and I'm sharp. I could just be like, Frith's talking to me, and then
Yeah,
And then
100%. Yeah.
Frith
Uh,
made it.
the power of an ancestor is determinant on how many people believe they are an ancestor.
Yeah.
So if you're the only one hearing Frith, that's a very weak ancestor. But if enough people turn around and say, I am also hearing Frith, they become an important ancestor, and that will grow.
So you could potentially, like ICOC, you could all club together and immortalize someone's character who died.
Yeah.
By all going.
And that's happened a few times, yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
There's certain points where it's like sometimes we all come together and it's like, even the person who admits, like, no, they're in the abyss. Like, they're not an ancestor. Like, they didn't do enough. And then other times, like, people will turn around and it's like, I can hear them, and then someone else is like, I can hear them too, and then it goes on, and then they're an ancestor of that nation. They're not a personal ancestor anymore. Because that's the difference. There's personal ancestors, which only you or a couple other people can hear, and then there's the national ones, which everyone of your tribe can hear. Like, they are your ancestors.
The ones that were especially
very important, yeah.
Right, we're down to our last couple of archetypes.
Right.
Let's do Bone Setters next, because this is one that drew me in the most. Purely my playstyle, but
yeah. So a Bone Setter is a mishmash of a physic, a quartermaster, a trader, a fill in the holes of any problem you've got right now. They are the backbone of the legions, essentially. They handle all the infrastructure in some form or fashion. Like, they will either get you the resources you need, they will either take care of you when you're wounded, they'll take care of any equipment that you need made, anything. Yeah, they will solve the problem if you give them enough time. And usually each group has like one Bone Setter, and then they'll give them some of their pay so that they can take care of the rest of the banner together.
I think it's kind of said that they sort of handle the Legion's finances, don't they?
Yeah, we have a sizable expanse of Bone Setters whose entire job is just making sure everyone gets fed in the Legion, and so on and so forth. And it's an entire very cool thing. And there's no real like hard set thing with what a Bone Setter does. Like, some people would say, like, oh, to be a quartermaster, I don't need to handle physical money. I just need to make sure everyone's okay. Like, that's an option. And others will be like, I don't heal. I just make sure everyone has the resources they require. And then others are like, I'm not very good at money, but I can fix your leg, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of combinations and reworks and putting things where they need to go, and that's what a Bone Setter is. It's supporting others through means in some fashion, essentially.
Yeah, no, I really like that archetype. I thought that was quite a cool one because, yeah, you've got like the trading side of it and handling the money and being that involved in that, but then also you kind of got the hands-on RP experience of doing healing, and I think orc healing could be quite fun.
Yeah,
because from my opinion of orcs, they're quite vocal and like straight to the point, and I think it'd be quite fun being like an orc physician who's just blunt and practical rather than like being delicate with.
Oh yeah, no bedside manner is like a big thing. Yeah,
like amputation. It's the most efficient way to do this, and they no, it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah. No, yeah, that would go down really well. There's quite, I'd say, like quite a few of our physic Bone Setters. Oh, to clarify, not all physics are Bone Setters, and not all Bone Setters are physics in the nation. It's an available thing.
You don't really have to put yourself down to an archetype, do you?
No, you don't.
You can do sort of what you want. Archetypes are just there to give you a focus, aren't they?
Yeah, they're there to give you a poke of what you may look at. And yeah, Bone Setters are one of those where it's just like, you don't have to do everything it says on the tin. You can just pick one of the things out and do that one thing, and that's fine.
Well, we're down to our last archetype now.
Last archetype, Pit Fighters. The bread and butter. And so, like I said earlier, when orcs do battle or enter into any form of conflict, whether that's a verbal conflict, an emotional conflict, a spiritual conflict, or a physical one, they can hear the ancestors. Well, a pit fighter has dedicated themselves to the brawl, to the engagement of traditional cultural fighting. Yeah. So when you have a disagreement with someone who is an orc and there's no alternative to it and you can't resolve it, you will pit fight to resolve the problem. So it's a case of, I don't know, it could vary from you can't agree on a name for a pet and you've been going on about it for years and it needs to be settled now, or it may be something so fucking dramatic of you left my insert relation to die and you won't admit it's your fault. We're going to resolve this in pit fight. And you can have stuff like that of it varies in importance or mundanity. And a pit fight encapsulates that completely of some people might not want to fight that battle personally and there's nothing wrong with it. But a pit fighter has dedicated themselves to the task of fighting in the pit. Like, they are the elite of the elite. So if you have a conflict but you don't feel comfortable fighting it yourself for whatever reason, you can get a pit fighter who is skilled in that department to do it.
Would you say like a pit fighter? So I was kind of reading the wiki, and the pit fight, like you said, they can hear ancestors when they're fighting.
Yes.
So dedicate themselves to the fighting. And it said they're quite commonly sort of associated with shamans because.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna want to, if you're hearing your ancestors whilst you're doing the fighting, you're hearing it and you're doing it a lot. You're going to hear a lot. So you could almost say like a pit fight can. This is the easiest way to get in I say in contact. The best way to kind of hear your ancestors, and it's you could almost say there.
Yeah. I think to make clear is we can't talk to the ancestors only in certain situations. On average, we can't. And it's only one way, and they're telling you things. So, the pit fighter is the encapsulation of someone who's not a shaman but wants to experience the ancestors in a more form. So, pit fights may happen as like a cultural thing, spiritual necessity, or whatever, and you call the pit fighters in to draw on that spiritual essence.
Pit fighter who's slogging out in the ring, having a big fight, and then there's a shaman there with like a little notepad, like. Yeah, what they told you, mate? What they told you? Trying to piece the puzzle, piece together
sometimes.
What's being said to this pit fire.
Or they're trying to get someone out of the blood rage, Someone's got a bit too into it. And they're listening to some Druge, maybe. And stuff like that, yeah. So...
Yeah, really, I think it's a real cool... The pit fights themselves. If we had another 4 hours to talk about Imperial Orcs tonight, we could go do a deep dive into pit fighting, but pit fighting again is another real cool thing which you can go see in the field because there's a pit in the Imperial Orc camp, and if you're lucky you'll probably see one happening or hear one. But again, another really cool experience.
We used to use pit fights to solve elections. We don't do that anymore. And generally I think the idea of resolving problems through pit fights has sort of died down a bit, and it's cooler to have a pit fight which is about like something very serious rather than something petty. So we haven't had that many pit fights lately, but when they happen now, they're very like.
They're obviously pit fights are a physical thing, so it's sort of a staged fight, isn't it? So I guess
somewhat.
It's it's kind of. These two people going at it, doing a fight is, I guess there's a lot more work. OC. So, the fact that like maybe you bump into an event and you can't name your pet for whatever reason. Slogging out a pit fight is a lot of work.
I haven't heard a pit fight actually being about two people struggling to name the same pet. I just
it's still time.
Out. It's still time.
It's a
will
good
happen.
idea.
Yeah. The pit fighters are also tasked with like taking care of the pit, and if called upon, they're the muscle in the camp to deal with problems, and uninvited guests get met with the pit fight sort of thing. Generally pit fighting, just to abbreviate it, generally there's two types. There's the old ways, it's just the contact, and then there's the new way, which is stat wise. So you go in with like 4 unstoppables and your sword and your shield, and then your mate's got him as a battle mage with paralyze, but like that's a bit but just generally like that, and you'll go at it full bore in like the new way of like you are trying to kill the other person, but you never finish them, if you will. You're in a fight to survive, not to kill, if that makes sense. We don't kill people in the pit. There's no deaths in the pit. The old way with the full contact, we have a thing on Thursday and Friday before time in, just to be like, if you're planning any pit fighting, here is the opportunity to practice some of that stuff so you don't hurt each other. And we have lovely staff on hand who help out with that, and some players come in and give advice on things and making sure it's actually like a really cool pit fight, and make sure no one gets any hurt. And they're genuine like fights of whoever wins. There have been cases of like someone's been on the end of like a complete beatdown, and then they won through a really cool interaction, and then they won the pit fight and stuff like that. And
yeah, nice.
The pit fights I've seen have been very intense, and they're quite an experience for anyone who does them.
Yeah, we. I don't know if you were there, Matt, but I've seen one. I think my entire time. I don't know what we were there for. I think it was the Night of Worth. Like, very long time ago. I would probably say 2018. Probably my first full year. And there was some pit fights going on in the dark, which was cool. Like torchlit. Very atmospheric.
Fair enough.
Right.
Yeah.
So to wrap up Archetypes, what would you say that the Imperial Orcs are lightest on in terms of potential things for new players to play?
I think we're light on thief takers. Could always do more pit fighters. I'd say could always do with some more Oathrights and Shamans. And maybe a couple more preachers.
It's also probably worth saying that you said to us the other day that the Imperial Orcs are sitting on about 80 players.
80 Summit players, yeah.
Yeah, so with Wintermark having hundreds, then you're going to have a lot more archetypes covered. So
yeah,
I guess when you've got 9 archetypes,
yeah, it's a bit of a mess. I'd say at ballpark measurements, we have like, to my knowledge, about 7 or 8 preachers, 5 or 6 Oathrights, like 4 pit fighters, and like 2 thief takers in my brain. So like, if that's like an estimation of the numbers for you, it's generally like that.
If I was to ever play an Imperial Orc, I would be drawn to a Shaman.
Yeah, they're very fun.
Yeah. I read Shaman completely differently. Now we've actually spoken about it, I find it a lot more appealing.
Yeah, they also get visions as well. Like they'll get in their packs, they'll get visions from the ancestors, and they may be like key things that are going on at the minute. They're not all the time. They will pop up.
That's interesting.
That's cool.
So, yeah, and generally they're the ones who, like I said, whereas the Oathrights are more like within the realm of reality, culturalism and traditionalism, they're the spiritual culturalism. Traditionalism. They're very much like the ancestors are telling them, you must do this correctly. Whereas Oathrights are more doing it because they've read that's how it has to be.
Yeah.
My dog is trying to break in.
Is that a vision?
Yeah. Just gonna let her in brief.
Yeah, if she wants a feature, then by all means.
Alright. She just wants to know what's going on. But yeah, I think there's so many archetypes, and they're all very fun. And some are more condensed than others.
You've got a really nice range of
Yeah.
archetypes, which is cool because some of the other nations I've looked at, and like some of the archetypes, you're like, I'm not sure when that would really be played, or if people would want to play it.
Well,
Yeah.
to bring up an immediate example, a maggot in Wintermark. That was for me. That would be extremely difficult to play and enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. So,
if there's any maggots out there listening, then let us know why you want to be a maggot.
Yeah.
I feel, I mean, I've got another one in my head, and I can't quite think about it, so I'm going to try quickly find it.
I think maggots literally listed as like scum or something. I just think, why would you want a negative roleplay? But then I guess some people want to. Maybe they have a particularly positive life and they want to play the opposite. But it ain't for me.
I'm not finding the one. Anyway, so a good, nice selection of archetypes. I guess, do we want to quit? Well, we're basically done now, which is, it's felt like a long slog in a good way, because we've had so much to talk about. But if we were to finish on sell us your nation, so probably like if you were to go, if you're you obviously are buzzing about Imperial Orcs because they're great and you are Imperial Orcs. If you were buzzing to a mate, like, mate, come to LARP, come to Imperial Orcs because...
Well, what we did before was sell it to us. Why would we want to play Imperial Orcs?
Well, sell it to new players and old. Like, why do you think?
I think you should join the Imperial Orcs at the basis of everything that you do is impactful. Everything you do matters to someone. It could be the smallest thing, it could be the biggest thing. Everyone gives a shit that you did it. What you do in this life echoes for eternity within the Orcs, completely. It will, no matter what, you will be welcomed, you'll be loved. They will support you completely. You will be in a nation that doesn't feel like any other. Purely out of the fact of everybody knows who's who. Everybody knows who's into something. And they will point you to where you need to go do the thing. And do it cool. Worth itself encourages you to do deeds which are not to benefit yourself. They're to benefit everyone. And be remembered. And it's an amazing experience to be in a community that appreciates the smallest things, and that's how I'd sell it.
I'm pretty sold.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's I think really we've only sort of just scratched the surface of all the things that we could talk about for Imperial Orcs. So I think we might have to revisit in the future.
Yeah.
But that's a really good intro to Imperial Orcs as a nation. That was really good. Thank you for that, Robbie.
No worries.
Did we have any? I had a question, but I think you've already answered it. Yes, you did. It was about the what was the meaning behind the weight of worth, but you covered it.
I could expand upon it.
Well, yeah, sure.
All right. So, worth intrinsically is not money. It is not how valued you are. It is not how much coin you have or anything. It is purely what you do in your legend. And the best way to spread your legend is to have an impact on other people's lives. And having those impacts generates items of worth. Like some items of worth of legend are like the pens that sign the liberation. The hammer of the sun hammers, or the last unshattered hammer of the sun hammers. The there's so many. Sorry, I'm just like I can't say them all. And a lot of them are sacrifices for the benefit of others. Like Araz signed the declaration knowing it would be a political suicide, But he did that, and that resulted in the benefit of all. The Sunhammers dedicated themselves to years of service to the Imperial Orcs, and in one final battle, they gave their lives to benefit those around them, and so on and so forth. Like, the best thing you can do to generate worth is to do deeds which both benefit and impact others. And to encourage that through an item in the future, because you've done that, now that you did that, like something you had on you, like your buckler or your belt buckle or a hat, I don't know, just anything that's on you, a trinket, something that remains after you're gone, will then go on to influence you further. And the weight of worth is proving that you're valuable, proving that you're worth equal benefit. Like, if you don't think you're worthy, then you're not helping, you're not benefiting, you're not striving to the next victory, you're not being a part of that, and that's killing for an orc.
You want to put in more than you take out when it comes to society, essentially, as an Imperial Orc.
Yeah, you do. Because there's nothing worse than being the one that puts everyone else at risk. Now, you don't have to do this through fighting. You don't have to do this through any of the combat or martial related things. Everything's valid. Everything that you do could possibly do. Anything that is just appreciated or is impactful to history, even if it's like in the background and isn't written in the pages. Like, people doing deeds and doing them well will generate items and will encourage others to do those deeds and do well. That's generally it. Like, we have items which just encourage you to look out for others, and that's genuinely like an item of worth, which is just you look out for others. Like, you don't need to kill the bad thing, you don't need to fight, you can do fundamentally just as groundbreaking things.
It's kind of like with Wintermark, when like a hero has a name, for example, which is a big thing in Wintermark, and it gets sort of misinterpreted where you can only gain heroism on the battlefield.
It's like,
which is not true. Like, you can do some incredible trade deal that's benefited Wintermark, or you've gone and built a great works for Wintermark, and so it's a similar kind of vibe where it's not. And again, obviously, you can't angle part of a game to only combat, because like 40%, 30% of the players in the field don't do combat, and then you gain them. So you always got to have that sort of
like, you could have worth as a smith, you could have worth as a healer, you could have worth as a trader, you could have worth as essentially anything you could think of. If you're doing the service and you're doing it well and you're doing it for the benefit of the nation, then that has worth to it. And eventually your legend will grow. Even if it's a humble legend, it's still your legend. And eventually, if you impact enough lives, you will generate enough items of worth and become an ancestor. Hopefully. Because we don't... Yeah, it's not really known how ancestors are chosen. Like, some people believe ancestors of the past dictate who becomes the next ancestors. Some people think it's just a numbers game. Other people think it just happens. And others believe that if enough orcs think that they're worthy, like the person who's died, to become an ancestor, they'll believe it, and then it will be so. And
they'll pop into ancestral.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you've actually answered two questions in one there, because I think is it Apoth at the start of the stream? Asked what is worth and how does one weigh it, and my question was going to be, what does the weight of worth title mean? So you sort of cover both there, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like,
the way of worth title like itself is it is my job, one, to lead the oath rites in a direction. Like I set the mission statement and we do that. It is also to guard and maintain the items of worth which don't have a home yet. Like we have our sinecure called the Hall of Worth, which its entire point is it is a place to house things which don't have a home yet. And until the day that the right orc comes along to receive that item will be maintained and cared for until it can be used. And it's my job to weigh the worth of individuals and pair them with the correct item. And at the night of worth to also determine whether an item which someone has dedicated their legend to is truly an item of worth or it requires more to become one. And that's the job. So it's hunting down items, giving items to people, determining items. That's generally the job.
Very cool.
The whole recent Eternal debacle was very new, but we're dealing with that.
That's fine. It's in hand.
It's all good. We got it.
Awesome. Well, I think that is probably, unfortunately,
the
time. As much as I'd love to carry on chatting about orcs late into the night, it'd be cool to, like we said earlier, do a follow-up sometime. I think.
About orcs more.
Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Robbie, for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. We will see you at E2, presumably.
Presumably. I will be popping by.
Excellent. I will be in attendance at E2. Matt, I believe, is in attendance at E2 currently.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that'd be cool. We'll link up. Get up to no good, probably.
Probably. I'll probably be stuck in the camp 90% of the time. So I'll have to run over and be like, hi, friends. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah, out of the new back gate.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We have a back door now. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been very fun.
Oh, good to hear.
I hope everyone at home enjoyed the pretty much filibustering we've been doing.
I'm sure they did. Well, everyone, you're free to let us know what you enjoyed most about this video. Drop it in the comments below. If you're not already, jump in the Discord. If you want to see how good Matt is at gardening and how bad I am at gardening. The one thing I've planted this year hasn't grown. So that's
wonderful.
0% success rate so far. We'll be back in... Is our next video...
I was rushing to find out, but
I believe it's the Froth video.
It is on the 4th, which is literally next week, because the week after we ain't going to be here.
No.
So yeah, next week we will be doing a Froth stream where we're just going to have a chill chat and get excited for E2. And then then we'll be in the field.
Doing filming in the field for blog part 2, not part 2, blog 2.
Yeah, so keep an eye out.
And also playing Empire, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of got to do that as well whilst we're going there. So.
Side note. Awesome. We'll have a good rest of the night, everyone watching, and to you guys as well. We will catch you on the next one. Much love.
Bye.
And goodbye.